Perfect. Alrighty. So, welcome everyone to WorkSmart Live Basics Teams Training. This is part 2 of our 2-part Office 365 basic training. I'm Dawn Church. I'm WorkSmart's events manager, and we're back today with the fabulous Marissa Wayman, WorkSmart's marketing manager. You want to say hi,
everyone?
Thank you so much for joining us today, Marissa. And while I'm at it, I want to say a big thank you to our friends at the Durham Chamber of Commerce for coordinating with us to make this event open and available to all of our chamber members. So thank you to our friends from the Durham Chamber. Alrighty, so last week we went over some of the best apps in Microsoft 365, formerly Office 365. We kind of are still using those interchangeably, but they mean the same thing. Microsoft just decided to rename their package. So we went over some of the best apps in Microsoft 365 for everyday collaboration and productivity. So things like Planner, OneDrive, and To-Dos. So today we're going to show you how to bring all of that together in Microsoft Teams. So some people think about Teams kind of as like the new Skype for business. And at first glance, it certainly can sound very similar, especially if we're talking chat and video calling features. But there's so much more to Microsoft Teams than just virtual communication with your coworkers. And how you communicate within Teams has a lot more structural capabilities than Skype did too, which helps you keep all of those things really organized in a nice, neat little collaboration hub. So we use the phrase collaboration hub a lot, actually, when we talk about Teams. And I wanted to tell you a little bit more about why that is, and it's really for 2 reasons. One, because Microsoft Teams brings all of your team members together in one centralized location or hub where you can communicate and collaborate a lot more effectively through one-on-one chat, group chat, and the 3 tiers of Teams, which Marissa so helpfully kind of referred to as like the Russian doll almost of Microsoft Teams. And we're going to go into what that means a little bit more as we get into the demo, but it helps you stay nice and organized within Teams. And those 3 tiers are Teams, Channels, and Tabs. So, and Teams makes it really easy for your people to share files and resources with each other. And you can even create, share, find, and edit documents together in real time within the Teams window, while maybe you're in a video meeting together. And scheduling those meetings is a snap too, with the Teams calendar feature that can show you the availability of everyone on your team. So Teams brings your people together in a virtual hub or your virtual office for the time being. So the second reason why we kind of call Teams your collaboration hub is because it can also bring in a lot of your everyday business essential tools together, like your Microsoft 365 apps like Planner and OneDrive, you know, the things we showed you last week, and even some third-party apps like Salesforce and Adobe Sign. And it brings all of this together in one window with your team on your desktop. So you've got your people, you've got your tools, everyone can work together, all of these things work together, all in one centralized, neat little hub. So, and we're gonna show you how to do a lot of these things today. I feel like I need a, but wait, there's more GIF right about now, kind of like the Shazam infomercial, you know? But wait, there is a little bit more. So with all of those benefits said, it's also available at no cost to everyone right now for the next couple of months as a result of COVID-19, which is really cool. But any time of the year, normally, it's just part of your Office 365, Microsoft 365 license. So it's a tool that you probably already have access to. And within it, you've got enterprise security and compliance. So it's really a win-win-win all the way around the block. So we're gonna go into this hub now. So I'm gonna pass it off to Marissa and we'll get started.
Cool. All right. So as Dawn mentioned, lots of different things that there are available to you in Teams. So we're gonna focus on kind of some of the bigger things And we'll tie in some of those aspects that if you joined us last week, you would have remembered Planner. And we talked a little bit about OneNote, but we definitely covered OneDrive. As John mentioned, I'll kind of show you some of that stuff. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And if you guys could all give me a thumbs up. Do you see my screen? The wrong screen, I think.
I see your...
You see my notes.
I see your Teams.
Oh, you do see my Teams, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. The one thing I love about Zoom, it doesn't show me what I'm presenting. All right, so you see my Teams. All right, so this view, what you're seeing here is your standard desktop application. So Microsoft Teams is most functional as a desktop app, but it is available in the browser and it is available on your mobile device. So lots of different ways to stay connected. Today, we're going to focus on that desktop application because it is so feature rich. So just to give you some test drive, kind of the basics, the layout of the land here, I'm going to start over here on this left sidebar. This is your menu to help you navigate as you go through. We'll kind of go through each one of these icons at the same time, or excuse me, in a little bit, not at the same time. Talk about them all at one time. The window you're seeing right here that says chat right now, and this is your conversations window. It's going to have threads, and you'll use that in chats, and you'll use that in the team section. What you're seeing right now is the chat feature. So it's actually this icon right here. This is your private one-on-one or group conversations. So you've got all of your threads right here that you can kind of, you can go through a whole list of contacts versus who you've talked to recently. You can easily add favorites. As you can see, you can pin people if you're going to be talking to people regularly, like Dawn and I. Clay and I were talking regularly, so instead of having to search for them, I like to go ahead and have them pinned. As you can see, if you click on the ellipses, this is going to be a feature that you're going to want to pay attention to across teams, because a lot of times functionality you're looking for is hidden in those ellipses. So here you can see that you can tweak and customize. You can also drag and drop these to make it the most effective for you. This over here, get off of that a little. This over here where you see Dawn's picture and these tabs at the top, this is going to be your main window. This is where all of the conversations and all of your goodies are going to be accessed. By default, private chats like the one I'm in right now with Dawn, this is going to have 4 tabs at the top. And tabs are really a way, it's used in chats and it's used in the Teams conversations. But these tabs are designed to give you, think of them like quick links. What are the tools, what are the files, what are the things that you're using regularly within that group of people? So for chats, it's going to be defaulting to the conversation thread, your files, organization, which is really kind of cool if you're in a larger organization or you have someone new on your team and you're not quite familiar with where they fit in the organization. You can kind of come in here and take a peek at where they fit. And then of course you can kind of look at activity, the activity trail while that screen decides to load. I'll show you over here. This is actually, before I hit there, I'm going to come up here real quick. This is a neat little tool if you are part of more than one organization. If you have 2 different Office 365 tenants but you'd like to be able to use Teams in one interface, you can actually switch between those 2. You can't actually log into both at the same time, which is great from a security standpoint, but you can essentially log out and re-authenticate to a different tenant within the same Teams platform and not lose anything. We're going to stick with WorkSmart today. I can click off of it. My lovely headshot here in the upper right-hand corner is going to be very similar across very similar across Microsoft 365. And it is going to give you a menu for kind of your personal settings, if you will. I can change my picture right from here. I could go at, this is my profile picture. I can change my status. So these are pretty straightforward. Basically just lets people know that I'm doing something and it may be slower to respond, but do not disturb actually blocks people from sending you messages. So you do have that ability to do that. and then of course be right back and appear away. You can give yourself a status message, which always reminds me of back in the days when I used AOL Instant Messenger. I'm not as cool as I once was, so I don't have great messages posted at all times. There is a settings feature here, which we'll pop into later, so I can kind of show you some of those notifications, but this is general settings across Teams. You can do things like device and audio settings in there. And then a nice little pop over to keyboard shortcuts if you're interested. Up here in the search bar, this is, if you need to search any of the content in Teams, it is available for search. This right here is a shortcut to creating a new chat. This little window guy, well, he's a little slow, but here you would click on it and you'd be able to create a new chat if you didn't have one already open. And that's really kind of the overview, kind of this is what your layout looks like so that we can start digging into things. Do we have any questions so far on kind of this general layout? I promise I'll dig more into like the features of chat in this left sidebar. We good, Dawn?
Not on the general layout so much.
Cool.
Somebody did comment and say that they think this is similar to Slack, and it is, but there are quite a few differences as well. Do you want to speak to what those are real quick, just from a high level standpoint?
Really, Slack is almost as, it is very similar, and it does have some cross application integration. So essentially you can tie Slack into other tools if you use them. Same thing with Teams. The big thing about Teams is that it integrates into Office 365. So if you are a Microsoft 365 user, there's a lot of really cool functionality that's just built in. Other than that, I don't have like a list of kind of features, one versus another. Do you have anything, Dawn, to add on to that?
No, I think my point was mostly like that one of the the key benefit that we're kind of really looking at today is, or the key difference between like this and Slack is you might have a lot of like the same like chat features, but the integration point is what's important.
Yes, absolutely. It's one, the idea behind having a co-working space or a collaboration space is that you're pulling everything into one tool. And so Slack is a great communication tool. It's a great multi-working tool, multitasking tool like Teams, but being able to add all of those Microsoft 365 apps, your files, your apps like Planner and Stream, it just makes it easier. Plus it's already kind of bundled into the expense that you already have with Microsoft 365. So there's some opportunity for cost savings there as well. All right. I always love the Slack question, which is we used Slack once upon a time at WorkSmart for a very little bit of time. We were testing it out when we started using Skype for Business a little bit more. And then when Microsoft Teams came out, we were like, all right, we're in.
Mm-hmm. We did have one question that came in regarding chat real quick, and it was just, can you repeat how to quick start a new chat?
I sure can. So if you look here on the screen up in the purple toolbar, there is this little new icon. If you click on that, that'll bring up your new chat. And you can see in my chat thread, it'll just say new chat with no icon, and I can go ahead and start typing names. So if it's a one-on-one conversation, once I start typing, it'll autofill all of the people, the users throughout my organization. And then if I wanted to select Dawn, but I also wanted to make sure that, let's say, Bob was in on the meeting as well, I could go ahead and add him here. But you can see, as soon as I started to add Dawn, it was like, wait a minute, you have a chat with Dawn already, brought it up instead of starting a new one. But if I wanted to add Mr. Bob Casey to the mix, then I could go ahead, do that, and create a new chat with multiple people. So see, starts a new chat. Mm-hmm. Or a chat that we had once upon a time.
Yeah. Okay, so there's another question on chat, which is pretty quick, and it says, is there a way to have a separate window for chat? For example, while you're looking at Teams or Calendar, open chat separately without leaving the current window. I personally know that you can do that with a one-on-one chat. You can pop a specific chat out into a new window, but do you know if there's a way to pull your whole chat out without leaving Calendar?
Not that I'm aware of. No, like the entire chat section.
Yeah, I don't think so, but
Not that
could
I'm
you?
aware of, but we can definitely take that as a follow-up item.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll write it down for follow-up. But can you demo how to pop out a single chat real quick?
Yes. That that is a. I actually don't know if I have. That's not one that I've got here available for me. I can send a video after this, just kind of demo that to people. I don't have the option here.
Can you hover over Kim's? I
Yeah,
think I saw it.
you see it?
It's weird that it's not popping up. Yeah, there should be a little icon that like shows when you hover over someone's chat. For whatever reason, it's not popping up on Marissa's right now, but it looks kind of like like your standard icon for popping something into a new window, and that should happen automatically when you hover over something, and it's just not happening right now.
Mine is not doing it at the moment. All right. I promise I'll get more into chat. There's lots of different things between chat that I want to get to. Before I hop over there real quick, I did want to show you guys the pop over to the left sidebar into the activity feed. And this is a great place to come to see if you have any kind of, if someone's mentioned you or what's going on. You can use the filter to actually, if you put in, let's see. I want to filter my activity and go in. I can type in my filter, or I can see my activity. So I can see what I've done, but I can also filter to see by the @ symbol to see if anyone has mentioned me throughout the messaging. And I'll show you about @ mentions here in a second. All right, so here in chat, go back here. So in order to start a new, let's say I've got my thread with Dawn, I'm gonna hop back over here. And if I want to start a new message, it's just in this text bar down here at the bottom. It's a very straightforward text bar. However, if you use the rich text option in the toolbar, it'll actually expand that window. And it gives you the option to start playing around with what the content looks like. And it actually gives you the option to add headings. So if you want something to be more formal, you can have a heading, and then you can go back to the different kinds of text just to make sure that you have differences between the fonts. You can add links here, which is neat. So you can go ahead just like you would in a Word document. You can hyperlink something. You can add in the ellipses. Again, you can add code. You can add a table, all these different options down in here. You also have the option to mark something as standard, important, urgent. It does change the way it notifies people. So in chats, so your private chats or your group conversations, you have the option to, you'll be notified when something happens in your chat. When you're in a Teams, and I'll get into a little bit more about the differences between Teams, but Teams is more of a public platform. Think of chat as more of a private space. And in your public space, in your Teams, you're not going to get as many notifications unless you are called out specifically. So this is a neat little function here in the private conversation, so that if I need to send something to Dawn and I want to make sure that she gets a notification, I can mark it as urgent, and it's going to repeatedly notify her every 2 minutes for 20 minutes. I've never actually used it because I'm not sure anything I have is worth reminding someone every 2 minutes for 20 minutes, but maybe I'll try. You also have the option here. This is kind of the first glimpse into pulling in OneDrive and some of those other applications, but you can upload files here. You don't have to upload it from OneDrive, but you do have the option. If I wanted to click into a file browser, I would do that there. Just as an FYI, anything that you do upload into your conversations is going to attach to storage right here in the thread. So if I were to attach this document here, I could go into files and find it there shortly after. Similar to how we did in Planner, when we added a file to Planner, a Planner task last week, we had a SharePoint site on the back end that created and stored files. This is a similar concept here. Also in the kind of the chat toolbar that I like to call out, I always have to give a little bit of an homage to GIFs. I really do enjoy sending GIFs throughout the organization. It gives a little bit of a personality. As you can see here, I sent a thank you one to Dawn. But you also have the opportunity to send stickers. Very similar. You can create kind of your own memes, send them to people throughout the company. Again, bringing in that personal touch. We're going to go through this here in this here. I like to call out and let people know that this gives you the option to schedule a meeting or to meet now right from your chat. So if I wanted to, if I'm in the middle of sending Dawn a message and I realize that, you know what, a call would just be so much easier, I could schedule a meeting for the future because I know Dawn's really busy and I'm not going to just ask her to drop everything and talk to me right now. I'm going to let her know here in Teams and I'm going to schedule a meeting. The other option is if I come back up here to this video call button, this is the audio call button, and this is your screen share button. This will give you those options to just jump right into a call. So if I want to call Dawn, but I don't really want to pick up my phone and call Dawn or use the hosted VoIP application on my desktop, I could just click here and I could use the internet to make a phone call. Same thing with screen sharing. Come back down here. This little icon is the Microsoft Stream icon. So if I wanted to go ahead, and you can see here, I added a stream video. You can click this and it'll ask you if you want to paste a link. You can paste a link to a channel or to a video, and it just it brings that right there into Teams for you. Same thing what you could do with YouTube. I have forms installed in my Teams, so that's what this little F button here down at the bottom. And then you can find more apps if you need to. If there's an app that you use that you want to send, there's we'll talk about a little bit more about apps, but there's all sorts of apps, including third-party apps that you can bring into Teams, which is really cool, so that you have everything you need at your fingertips. Let's see, any other questions, Dawn and attendees? Any questions about chat?
Yes. So we actually have a few questions. So I'm doing a quick scroll to look for about chat.
Bring them to me.
Okay. All right. So chat question. So when you start a new chat with someone, how do you start a new chat without all the previous chats? I think the answer is they're just always there, right?
They're always there. So the idea is that you have constant communication, and you have the historical record. And so you're always going to pick back up from where you left off, including chats in meetings. If your meeting is recurring and you chat, let's say you send a file through the chat, in the next week when you have that recurring meeting, that history will still be there.
Cool. Okay. So next chat question. Okay. Can chat only be used while in a meeting?
No. No. This is the great thing about Teams. There are so many use cases. And so chat is, as standard chat feature comes, it is just an opportunity for you to instant message or possibly replace or call based on the option to do the audio call or the video call. It's really that one-on-one communication. The Teams portion of this is going to encompass group conversations that are basically public to whoever is joining it. So if you need to have a group conversation, let's say between your two of your peers, and you don't want the whole company having access to it, you can just create a group conversation. In fact, one of the things, I'm not technically on the sales team, but I do join their meeting to talk about all the lovely and wonderful things we're doing in marketing. So instead of having a channel for our sales and marketing weekly meeting, we actually have a group conversation. So you'll see that here, Sales and Marketing L10. This is a group conversation that has multiple people in it. You see by the split screen view here with Bob's face and some other folks. But here we have our chat, we've got our files, we have the same things you see here with Dawn's chat. It's just available to a group. And one of the cool things, I'm glad we're talking about this, is that you can rename these. So this originally said Bob, Clay, Jim, and Marissa. But by using these ellipses, I was able to not have the functionality to do it here. I can come up here, don't click the ellipses, and I can rename it by using the pencil. And I can give it a name so that it's more meaningful to me to come from Sales and Marketing L10, especially when the meeting invite says just a meeting, Bob, Jim, Clay. So that's something, a little tip that I like to share with people. Same thing right here on the events and the marketing conversation. It's my long-winded answer.
Okay, so 2 other questions on chat before we leave chat. Yeah. Is the chat conversation history saved in my email similar to how it was with Skype for Business?
So the way that Teams works, it works off of Office 365 groups. And so it doesn't work quite the same in terms of syncing your kind of Teams conversations and whatnot. Your conversations, what I recommend people when we talk about saving the data, if I want to find historical conversations, sorry y'all, my computer's just a little bit behind me, so when it thinks I click on something, it pops up Windows. Instead of relying on email and Teams to kind of save these messages, a really solid backup solution, a third-party backup solution that can, they're specific to Microsoft 365, and the good solutions will actually back up your conversations as well. And so if you ever needed to go in to access the history of conversations, you can do so with that tool.
Cool. Okay, so there was a question on file sharing within chat. And the question was, can you pull files from share file?
That's another great question. So you can pull files from anywhere. So if I'm uploading from my computer, what it's going to do is it's going to give me the option to, oh, I'm not sharing my full screen, so you don't see my File Explorer. But essentially, my File Explorer gives me my locations on my desktop. And I have my OneDrive synced locally. And so if you have your share file synced locally, you could easily do that. You could go ahead and upload it that way. The other way that you could do it is just provide it as a link in the section as well. But there's no, like when we were in Planner and you could attach a link, there isn't a true attach a link function here in the Teams conversations.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. Forgive me if you already addressed this, but can you add people to an active chat?
I did not address that. It's a great question. So I showed you how to add someone at the beginning of a conversation if you use that new chat initiation. But if you come up here to the people, and these are my people, and if you click on it, it will show you, if I was in a group conversation, it would show me the participants. And then would give me an option to add. But here, this is where I would add that if I wanted to go ahead and bring someone else into the conversation, I could do so here. It does kick off a new conversation. So if Dawn and Jason and I have not had a new thread before, it'll be a fresh conversation with nothing in it. But if we do have an existing conversation, it'll take over from that point. If you're adding people to your conversation, they're not going to see what you had previously, but they will see everything moving forward.
Cool. And then can you invite people outside of your organization into a team?
Yes. So you can have external participants, or in Teams, it's called guest access. That is going to be determined at the admin level. So if you need, if you want to talk offline about best practices around external participation, that's more of like a back end Microsoft 365 setting, but it is possible.
Cool. Okay, that's all that we have on chat.
Cool. I did realize that I forgot one thing about chat, and it's actually up, I don't know why, but it's up on my window on its own. You'll see here that you can react to messages just like you would on a social platform. So I can give people a thumbs up. I love using the thumbs up to reply to people to let them know that I've seen their message without having to reply. So it's just neat that you can do that. You can also click these ellipses and you can save a message. So if you wanted to bookmark it and look for it again, you could do that. When you do bookmark a message, you use the search bar to find it. There's a command. So if I were to save this particular message and come up to the search bar, I hit the whack saved key, I can see my saved list and I can access messages that way. So if you ever come across something that's really important, know that you can bookmark it. Some of the other things that I think are pretty cool here is that you, well, hello there. I want this one. There we go. If I click on here, I can edit the message. So if I sent something and then I realize it spelled it wrong, I can go back. I can delete a message. I can mark it as unread. So if John has sent something important to me and I've seen it, but I'm not ready to really see it, I can mark it as unread. And then the immersive reader, I think, is pretty cool. You can have somebody read to you if you would prefer to have your messages read. So that's going to close it here on chat. I'm now going to move on to Teams. And just a reminder that now that we're thinking about Teams, think more public. Now, when I say public, essentially, as Don mentioned, there are the 3 tiers of Teams, the triple T. And you've got your teams, which are essentially your groups of people and conversations and files and tools kind of all in that one place. So that's the way to think about teams. Teams are made up of owners, members, and guests. So the guests are the people that are external to your Office 365 tenant. The channels, now, so we're here with your teams. You create your team with the people you want to have in it. So your team doesn't necessarily need to be public, but within your team, you're going to have channels. I'm kind of showing you my hands. You can follow along. I'm Italian. Your channels are going to be your discussions for a team around a dedicated topic. So think of channels like they could be your departments. They could be your functions. So if you're a marketing agency and you want to wrap it around client groups, you can do that. It's really up to you on how the channels best represent the way you work internally. But to remember that the channels are open to anyone in the team. So that's kind of teams and channels, and it works. It would be helpful if I actually showed you teams. So over here on the left sidebar, if I went into teams, you'll see again the same structure. I've got my pinned and then all the teams that are accessible to me, but I also have the option down here to either join or create a team. So if I have a code to join a team because it's private and I can't just search for it, I can put in my code, it'll pop up there. So same thing here. This is going to be your Teams threads, and this is going to be your main window, and a lot of this is going to look very similar. Any questions before we move on? It's really important to kind of understand how teams and channels work together. We're not going to really talk about those moving forward. We're just going to talk about the features within a channel. So take a moment and make sure nobody has any questions about that. None?
Not that I see specifically about channels, but Marissa, what advice do you have for creating and managing team channels?
Advice. All right. I think I've said it a couple of times, so I'll say it again. everyone can see what's inside of your conversations around the channels, your files, your applications, whatever you post. So just be thoughtful of that when you're creating your teams. Should I be using chat versus should I be using a team channel? Another good thing to take into consideration is that with every new team generation, whether you're starting fresh or you're building a new team and you're already existing Microsoft Teams, you get a general channel by default. And be careful not to put all your eggs into the general basket, because it's really easy to just dump everything there. And then you have the same exact problem that you have with email clutter. You have a hard time being able to follow conversations. So I recommend to really think about your setup in your channels and make sure you have channels that are around dedicated subjects so that you can really easily wrap that communication. For us at WorkSmart, departments works a lot, but we also, if you can see, we have some channels around like WorkSmart services. And then we also have teams broken out for marketing, so that Don, myself, and Clay can work on certain things and not have everyone in the company have access to it. So we have a marketing team with some channels underneath that. That's really, oh, I also recommend just creating a channel for social interaction. So people will use your general channel to socialize. So give them a place. Dawn has actually done a really good job of creating our social circuit at WorkSmart in the Teams channel. We have recipe shares and Spotify playlists. So it's even a great way to bring in your team around something other than work, but around themselves.
Mm-hmm. So there was one question that asked for more examples. So if that satisfies, I've marked it as done because I think you addressed everything. But if you want to see more examples, definitely let us know, and we'll make sure to make that happen. But there's one other question about channels. It says, can you switch something out of one channel to another? And then it says, suppose one thing and evolves into another. So I think that means, can you move content from one channel to a different channel?
So I'm not aware of moving content from one channel to another, but what I have found to be extremely helpful is this copy link. I will regularly post in our sales team channel, and I will give them all the details, kind of the flow of our events, our agenda, so that if anyone asks them questions about what might be covered, they have more insight. Then Dawn will actually share insight about the event, more logistical things like what time, how to register. She'll share that with our company in another channel. And I find that linking the two together is very helpful because there's information that's in one. I don't want to copy and paste and have kind of information drift. So what I usually do is just take this copy link, and it gives me a link to the actual conversation. As long as they have access to that channel, I can just go ahead and in my message on the other kind of channel, I can go ahead and essentially create that link so that someone knows that's what it looks like if I just default paste it. But they know that they can click this link in order to go to specifically to that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Another cool thing is when you do a new post, and again, this isn't like taking information from one channel into another channel, but when you create a new post, you can actually put it into more than one channel at a time, which is kind of cool. So if you have things that like need to go out, for example, to marketing and sales, and those are maybe two different channels, you can post it into two at one time with whenever you pop out that like editor that Marissa was showing earlier.
Yeah, and that when we talked about the conversations during the chat, the features in Teams channels are very similar. So what we're looking at here, this is a channel within the marketing team. So Dawn, myself, and Clay have access because we're all part of that marketing team. Whereas WorkSmart All is everyone in the WorkSmart company. So tabs look not tabs. These icons here in the toolbar are very similar. one thing that you cannot do in chat, because it's a group, it's a private conversation, but I can use the app mention function. So if I wanted to go ahead and specifically draw attention to Dawn, this will notify her, and it'll create kind of a tag in that post so that when I do post this, it will flag her attention. And I can do that across channels. The other thing that I can do is I can tag an entire channel, or excuse me, an entire team. So if I wanted to tag the entire marketing team, say like, everyone heads up, I'm doing this thing, whether you like it or not, and it'll notify them all. I never do that, by the way, never do that to anybody. So, and if it's, you know, if you're in a team and you have kind of multiple groups, multiple channels, you can tag the channels as well. So it's really, we use that regularly. When we want to get everyone's attention, we do an app mention for WorkSmart all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then last thing kind of on teams or channels, and this actually applies to chat too, but the question was, can you erase something that was said in a Teams or channel if it was posted incorrectly or posted in the wrong one? The answer is yes.
Sure can, and I'm glad it's there. If you sent a message and you sent it an error, you can remove it. You just hit the ellipses on the message and you can hit delete. When you do delete it, it will come up and it will just say this message has been deleted. Then there's a failure. This might be something to do with permissions on this particular channel, but it definitely works. So, or it might be because it's attached to a file. I think that's why it is, but I'll show you guys so that I can promise you this works. So we sent our test. We're going to come over here to the ellipses for the message. And I'm going to delete it. For some reason today it's deleting. It's not deleting, but it should delete from there.
And I was looking for an answer to someone else's question in Teams on my end, and noticed that it looks like there's some updates being made in some different places. So I bet that that's why we're having some issues today. So I apologize. Microsoft knew when we were doing this webinar, and they decided to make some updates right now. So one other question on at mentioning people, Marissa, and it says, does the recipient get notified when you type @name?
They do. They do, and back in the activity feed, you can filter by your app mentions so that you can specifically, if you want to call out everything that you've been a part of, you can do that. The other thing is that when you are app mentioned, it will show you a red flag on the message. So it will show like a little, it'll appear here and it'll be like a big red @ symbol so that you know, oh, that's where they mentioned me. Multiple ways to kind of look at that same. You'll also, if you're in the desktop application, you will get a desktop alert that you've been mentioned into something as well. One more thing that I wanted to show you that's a part of the conversations that can also help with the search functionality is that when you come into the rich text editor for channel threads like this one, you can add a subject. And when you do add a subject, it increases the searchability. So if you want, you know, if you're going to post something and you're asking a question, you can use the subject to put the question in. Then every time you go to search something, it helps. But just to show you, when I popped out that editor, like Dawn had mentioned, you can specifically designate who can reply. You can post to multiple channels here as well. Lots of really cool things to do. There's a lot of things to show. So many things. Let's see. Oh, one other thing before I show you kind of some of the other tabs that are available to you, because this is the posts. So if you think about posts, this is your conversation thread in your channel. So just to give you an idea, this is our marketing team. We have a general marketing channel. We have an events specific marketing channel. So we're in the events channel. I realized I didn't show you guys that before. So we're in the channel. Here are the posts. If you want to send an email to your chat or to your posts in a channel, you can. So if you see here, this is what it looks like when you send an email. So I just forwarded an email. In order to do that, you would just click on the ellipses and it says get email address. You click on that and it will, all of your channels are going to be assigned a default email address. If you go in here and you grab the email address and copy it, you essentially just send it to there and it'll populate. So you can have something came to your email, but you want to share it. And you don't want to have a back and forth conversation in Outlook, in email, you can kick it over to Teams and just talk about it there. Natural segue over to files. So again, just like we were in the private chats, we have tabs at the top. By default, you're going to get posts and files, and that's it. All these others have been added, and I'll show you that in a second. Your files is going to be a SharePoint site that's created for every single channel. It's a collection for you to be able to store at your library of files associated with the channel. So anything you upload here, anyone on the team will have access to. So this email messages folder actually gets created when you send a first email to your channel. So every channel will have an email messages folder if you do send emails. So that's a nice way to grab those in the future. You just grab them from here. Any questions about that before I kind of move into some of the files stuff and more tabs?
No, sorry, we had a new question come in, but it's actually about files, so continue.
Cool. So this, if you're familiar with using OneDrive or SharePoint Online, this is that interface that you're seeing. You have the option to do many things up here on the top. You can actually open it in SharePoint so that if you wanted to have access to it in a browser instead of working here, you can do that. These ellipses, again, these will hide, they hide, but really cool features. If I wanted to send someone the folder, I could just hit copy link. I could rename it. When you get to specific files, you have a few more options. You can download. So if I wanted to take the artwork with me or the slide deck and put it on my computer, I can do that from here. I just download. And it'll show me as a download file, and I'll show you over here on the left sidebar. There's a place to access files as well. We'll pop over that to it shortly. But here, when I do have a file, I do have the option to make it a tab. So if this is a file we're working on regularly, and instead of having someone to come into the events folder to dive deep, I can go ahead and just make it a tab and it'll appear up here. So I can do that right from within the files. And then there's some more functionality. Oh, the option to check it out. Let's see. You can also, when you do open a document, this is something I find to be really cool. If you do open a document, this is what it looks like. You don't leave Teams. It stays within the application unless you choose to open it in the desktop app. Essentially, at this point, you're using the online apps for Microsoft 365. So if you wanted to open the desktop app, you can. So just a warning, you're probably going to have some, just like you would online, you are going to have reduced functionality. So pop it open into the desktop app if you need more. But this tool right here, last week we talked about collaborating in documents. So you can do this in the cloud on its own, but if you're in Teams, you can actually hit conversation and it will pop open a conversation in Teams about your document. And so you can start talking, and if I want to let Dawn know, I can send her a conversation from here. I can mention her. She's going to get a notification that it's here, and we can just go about our conversation just as we would any other way. Little cool feature. We'll close out of that. So that's files. All of these other ones have been added by me or someone else. And so this plus sign right here is how you add a tab. It'll open into a whole data, essentially a database of apps. You've got, as you can see, we've got our standard Office 365 ones, but I also have the option to do a PDF. I can do a URL. You can even have YouTube. And then there's a ton of other apps that if you do take, if you do use any of these, it'll be great for you to be able to, let's say, for us, we use Tiny Pulse for an employee engagement experience. If we wanted to be able to bring Tiny Pulse into Teams so that people can interact and give their high five, you know, their virtual high fives and their cheers for peers, they can do that right from Teams. Another way that they don't have to leave when they're middle, you know, in the moment, oh my gosh, Dawn is so amazing. She did this thing and I want to share this with everybody. I can just go into Tiny Pulse right there from Teams and remind everybody about how amazing Dawn is. So I added some here just to show you guys what it's like. This is a wiki that it's a part of the Microsoft 365 suite. And it just gives you the option to create pages and edit. If you're not familiar, it's a very basic wiki page. Notes is going to be your OneNote. So again, same thing. You can have a plan right here in Teams. This is my to-do. Everyone's proud of my to-do. So you can see, you can navigate the notebook. If you joined us last week, this board will look very familiar to you. This is going to be the planner that Dawn and I use to work on events. And so because we work on this so regularly, it wouldn't make sense for me to go to the browser. It would just make sense for me to pop into here. So I can see we've got our planner board, the same view, we've got our tasks. I can assign, I can open them, full functionality here. And then I also popped in a stream channel or video. I think I popped in a video. So if you come into here, you can see it goes straight to the video. It's utilizing Stream to host the video, but I want Dawn and I to watch the top 10, 11 tips for remote cybersecurity over and over again. And the best way to do that is put it right at our fingertips. So I've added it here. This is all done through adding apps. So when you go to add things like Stream or a website URL, you can name it. It doesn't have to be website. You can rename it. And then you can add your URL, and then you have the option to post about it in the channel. If you're adding something new and you want folks to know about it, leave this checked so that when you come back to your posts, again, it's the idea of posts is more than just conversations. It's also kind of updates. So you're not only, it's your FYIs, it's these are your I guess your news would be your FYIs, and then things that you're actively collaborating on. But just to let you know, when I added a Word document as a tab, it popped it. This is the standard language it populates. Here's a link to the new channel to give you an idea of what the Word tab just kind of opens up as a Word document, like we were looking at a file. And this, the little caret will give you some options to rename it. Files and posts, because they're default, you cannot rename them. I don't believe you can rename Wiki either. Any questions, Dawn, about that part?
Yes. Okay. So we had one question come in earlier that was actually about Planner within Teams that I feel like now is a good time to address. Could you pop back over to the Planner?
I sure can.
Thanks. Okay, so the question said, I'm not able to add a task or anything really in Planner from the Teams desktop app. I was able to add one from the online version of Planner. Please help. So if you have a planner built into your Teams like Marissa has done here, you will have full functionality. But if you look on the left side of the screen where it says Planner, that's an app that Marissa has integrated. If you click on that, all it's going to do is show you your tasks, and you can group them by your active plans. But yeah, you can't add stuff to it. The way that you would add stuff to it is if it's built into your channel.
Correct.
Do you have anything to add?
while I'm here, I'll just show you guys that you can group, right? It defaults to progress, but you can you can choose to look at it by plan if you wanted to. Here, if I do it by plan, it should let you create a task. So I'd be curious, I'd be curious to know if it's letting you create tasks anywhere in Teams. Then maybe there's something from a setting on that particular plan.
Yeah, that's interesting because mine wasn't doing that a little while ago. And that's when I was like, oh, it's updating, and now it's there. So
it's updated.
Just the day for me.
I will say, I think it's a good opportunity to mention that recently in Microsoft's big conference at Ignite, they were very excited to announce some of the new things that are going to be happening with Microsoft 365, the rebranding. We also talked last week about to-do and the difference between tasks, to-dos, and planner. And just to remind folks that tasks and to-do are essentially kind of, to-do is the interface to manage all of your to-dos or tasks. So it incorporates tasks from Outlook as well as your tasks from Planner. Microsoft is working on what's called Tasks for Teams, and that's going to replace the Planner app in Microsoft. And that's going to, this personal planner, it'll still, Planner like it is viewed here in the channel will look the same. You'll still see your boards, your charts, your schedule. However, on the personal app down over here where I was just at, this will no longer be Planner. It will be Tasks for Teams, and it'll be a much more friendly solution to, all right, what are all the things that I'm working on, and then bringing them together. That is going to be a really cool thing that they're doing in Teams, and they're actually rolling that out. They said mid-year, and I read in another article it was the May-June timeframe. So since there's only a couple days left in May, I bet you it'll happen in June.
Okay, so we have a couple other questions about files within Teams, so I'm just going to go down the list. So one of them is, can you access your SharePoint files within Teams?
You sure can. So over here on the left is your Files app, and this is going to pull everything in from Teams. So this is utilizing SharePoint for that. However, if you want to pull in SharePoint files, just also so you know, you can add cloud storage here as well. So if you do have Share File or Box or Dropbox, and you want to be able to save files, you can do that here. I'd be interested for the question we had earlier about Share File, if this helps. I don't use Share File on a daily basis, so I wonder if more collaboration within Share File. However, back to the other question. So this is all of your Microsoft Teams. This is SharePoint data. If you go back into any of these files here, so I guess that would be, I'm gonna want to look in here. If I want to, so it's not in there, but I can add a SharePoint file here by either going into, oh, it's because I'm in a conversation, a private chat. I can add the SharePoint in a Teams chat, but if also I can use the URL from a file in SharePoint to add here as well. I didn't see the option to add it under the cloud storage. So if you have a SharePoint library that syncs locally, you can likely do the same thing from the File Explorer. But inherently just accessing SharePoint, unless there's a section in here, I don't believe there's a way to just kind of create an app here on the sidebar. But there are a couple different ways to access SharePoint throughout. One of the other things I wanted to mention about SharePoint, because I do find SharePoint to be super helpful, even though it's a monster, and we could do our own 5-day training series on SharePoint. But some of the really basic things in SharePoint that I think are extremely helpful, SharePoint News, SharePoint Calendars, these are really easy things that you can set up. So if you have the need for creating like an internal blog, you can do that by just going into creating a new SharePoint file. So if I were to go into, for example, if I go into my marketing team and I wanted to create a new file, I can go into SharePoint very quickly. Whoop, it disappeared on me. I can open it in SharePoint. My screen, I'm not sharing that part of my screen, but let me flip real quick for you guys so you can see this. But I can also go to SharePoint at any time, and I can access kind of SharePoint from here. So if I needed to add something, like I wanted to pop over to SharePoint, you could pop over to SharePoint this way and create kind of news calendars, and then you have them accessible right there in the tab.
Cool. Okay. So back to like files and collaborating. We had a question that said, can multiple people edit a file if you share the link with them? If so, can they do it simultaneously?
Absolutely. So the great thing about Microsoft 365 is their online apps allow for collaboration. Even if you decide to use, let's say someone has shared a link with you and you've decided to open it in the desktop app, you can still collaborate in real time. When you're doing so, just to share a view of it for those of you that didn't join us last week, when you do go into a document, so this one is when I upload something into Teams, it becomes shared through that kind of that OneDrive link, which makes it editable in real time or something we can collaborate on. So when I'm in here, I can see who's working on it. If I were, Dawn, if you want to pop into.
I actually just wrote hello.
So I can see that Dawn's here, and I can see that she just wrote us a message. So we can go ahead and collaborate that way. If I want to call Dawn out, you can see her little cursor shows where she is. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. If I want to call Dawn out to like a comment, I can actually do that through the document itself. Up here, and Dawn. Well, it slowly but surely should do that. But you are able to @mention as well inside of a document if you want to call someone's attention to it. Apparently not liking it inside the Teams view.
Well, you can actually still see, I can see on my end, let me just make sure. So if you pop open the conversations tab,
yep.
So you can see that she tagged me earlier there. That's why it's highlighted as a link in blue. And then I just responded to her in the conversations. So if I @Marissa here, she'll see this on her screen. Ta-da! Where I've @mentioned her.
Do you see my desktop notification in the corner?
Yes, I do.
Oh, cool. So yeah, so it pops up, but it also, as I mentioned before, it gives me that red bold. It also will give these like red little flags with new conversations, but I can also go back over into the activity and see where I've been tagged.
So we had another question that said, it says, how do members of a team know that a document is checked out and or returned? I'm not 100% sure what you mean by checked out and or returned.
When you check out a document, you're essentially not allowing anyone else to edit it. So let's say we have a content for our event that we're working on, and I want to make the last tweaks to it, so I'm going to check it out. You have the option to check out. When anyone opens that document, they'll get a notification that the document is checked out, and they can either request to have permissions to open it, for it to be checked back in. And then you can, depending on permissions, you can force things to be checked back in. And because it also inherits because it is using OneDrive and SharePoint, you do still have the same like versioning and all the functionality that you would have in OneDrive.
Okay, so another question about within a channel, going back to the wiki. The question was, can you elaborate a little bit on the wiki? How would you set it up? Is Teams the only place where it can be accessed?
So the wiki is just a very plain document that allows you to create pages and sections. So if you can see here, this is the page. If I wanted to create a new page and show you what this looks like. So there's a page name, and then you have the option to add sections and content. So it's very, very simple. You can, again, have conversations about it as well, tag people in it. In terms of accessing it to elsewhere, if you create a wiki page in Teams, I believe it is still associated with the Teams channel. But we can follow up and confirm if it's accessible in the browser. I don't believe it is. And I just did a quick search in my apps in the browser, and it is not there. So I believe the only place you would be able to access it would be Teams. And then one of the other things that I haven't mentioned is that if you want to be able to copy a link to a tab so that you could say, hey, I put it here under, in this wiki, you can actually create a link, copy the link to the tab. And then in my message, I can just go over and let people know, whether it's a private message or if it's a group conversation, I can let folks know about where the wiki is. And it just comes up. It's a link, but it just comes up here so that when someone clicks on it, it takes them right back to that channel.
Mm-hmm. So one other question about pulling stuff into a channel. I got a question that says, can an access database be pulled into a channel so multiple people can modify the database?
Let's find out together. So access is not here. My familiarity with access is this big. So there may be ways, kind of workarounds into getting the database in. A lot of times when there's not an app available, I'll use the website to use the URL. Like we use IT Glue for our documentation. There's no IT Glue app, so I just simply take that URL and post it into the channel so that people can go in and log in. So there might be something along that lines that helps you bring it into Teams, but the answer is I'm not sure.
Cool. Okay, so that, I believe, is all of the questions that I have around channels specifically.
The most exciting part.
Yeah, I do have one on kind of the best practices, which I know we kind of touched on a little bit at the beginning, but the question was, is it realistic to make a team for each project/client as a way to track all activity related to that project or client? And then they pointed out that ours are very general for marketing services, et cetera, not specific to projects. So you want to explain a little bit why that is?
Yeah, so this is going to be, it's just like kind of when you're sitting down and planning your file structure, kind of your organizational structure, how do you best work? If you're a small organization and you have fewer clients and larger projects, let's say you have a few clients and you assign teams to those particular clients and that's how they work, that's how you're structured, then it makes sense to do that. For WorkSmart, we have 400 plus clients that we work with. It probably doesn't make sense for us to create something for each one of those. For us, very early on, we started going in the direction of creating teams for every department. So we had private teams for everyone, but then we realized that we needed this cross-pollination, that we didn't necessarily need to add everybody. So then we for this idea of having our departments as our teams. And as I mentioned, we also have our WorkSmart services team, which essentially each channel is a different WorkSmart service. So all of these services have notes and instructions and videos and marketing. So all of that is piled there. So while we do have our departmental structure, we also have our service structure because it makes the most sense on how we work. I hope that helps. My gut tells me that departments and how your organization is structured is the easiest way to do it. And then within different, so if I show you within WorkSmart All, we have things like human resources and sales and our social channel. We also have a public marketing group. We have a public sales group, but then we also have a private marketing group that we can break out even further. And if I wanted to create a channel for social, and everything social that Dawn and I work on is going to go under the marketing team.
So we have a queue of some other like miscellaneous questions, but I'm going to hang on to those for a little bit because we're coming on the end of time. I want to make sure that we have time to get to scheduling and calendar.
Yes.
And then we'll answer these questions, but it might be a little bit past the time. So if you want to move on to scheduling.
Do it. I will give you my fastest version of scheduling without leaving anything out. So the calendar icon on the left sidebar is going to give you a view of your calendar. And if you have meetings that you're able to join through Teams, you'll be able to do so here. So for example, I have a meeting with Dawn and Clay to talk about, you guessed it, events. And at that time, I can go ahead and join the meeting from here. You can also join a meeting from Outlook. And you can join a meeting from the mobile device, and you can join a meeting from the information, the link that someone has given you. A sample of that link is here. If you do click the link from like a calendar invite, it may open in the browser, and then if you do have the desktop app, it'll ask you if you could want to open it in the app. If you don't have a desktop app, it'll ask you if you want to prompt you. That's how external participants will join meetings, will be through the link. And close out of this to show you more about the calendar. If you wanted to go ahead and meet now, you can do that here, just like we did in the chat. It's just a meet now function. The new meeting is a scheduling function. So you can come here and schedule. Your scheduling assistant, similar to Outlook, is here. The details look very similar to setting up an Outlook calendar invite. The cool thing here is that you can add a channel. So if your meeting is going to be associated with a particular, let's say it's a marketing meeting, I can go ahead and add it to the one of the marketing channels. And so that if anyone ever wants to get to the meeting or access any of the details of the meeting, they can just go to the tab and get that information. Same editor here at the bottom that you might be familiar with now. We've looked at it a couple of times. And that's just kind of from a scheduling perspective. Once you schedule it, it will create that link, the join link. You'll be able to send it in Outlook from here. Let's see if there's anything else here before I move into, I can't do a video call from this presentation while I'm doing the presentation on Zoom, but I do have a slide deck with the details for making video calls. So let me see before I move on if there's anything else.
Before you move on to video calls, there was a question about scheduling a meeting for people who are part of a channel. So what Marissa just demoed, when you add a channel, it actually doesn't show up on everyone within that channel's Outlook calendar. But what it does do is it puts that meeting in the channel. So that way, when it's around the time of the meeting, like that'll show up in the feed. And it's actually kind of cool. I use this for our social calendar a lot. You can see who's in the meeting within that channel as the meeting's happening, which is kind of cool. Unfortunately, there's not currently that I'm aware of, Marissa, maybe you have more knowledge than I do, but there's not currently a way to say everyone in this channel, put them into the meeting, unless you do some sort of hack, like create a marketing at, for example, like we have email address where that's the email that we're putting the meeting on, and it puts everybody's meeting on their calendar that way. But that's the only thing that I'm aware of currently. Do you have other insights?
If you schedule a meeting, I just scheduled the meeting in a few minutes on the marketing channel, and you have, it's still loading. If you, I added this to the channel, but I also included Dawn. So it'll be available in both places. It'll be on her Outlook calendar as well as it'll be in the channel. That's one way of doing it, if I'm following the question. The other option is if you have if it's a kind of just a group conversation, you could do the meet now, and you would meet now with everybody in that particular group. But there's no way to just default assign it to a channel and have it a show to everybody, because it's associated with everybody on the team instead of just a select group of people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So there was one other question about scheduling new meetings. It says, can you add files to a new meeting? I know we'll let you add a link, but I don't see where you can add a file.
That's a great question. So you can add the link here. I don't see the option to add a file. I do know that when you do create this, it will go onto your Outlook calendar. You can add files that way, but it's a good question if it syncs. If we had time, I would test it out from mine, but we can follow up on that one.
So one other question about scheduling a meeting, and if you could go back to just pull up a test meeting again, that would be helpful. And the question was, are you able to view coworkers' calendars when scheduling a meeting? And the answer is yes, if you click on the scheduling assistant, which Marissa will show you. Yes.
So if I want to see who's required versus optional, very similar functionality to Outlook, I can come in here and see who is available. Well, I can see their availability. I know, I'm looking at Dawn. I want to know if she's available.
And you can see where our schedule lines up. I actually use this quite a lot, which makes my life so much easier. It saves a lot of time versus going back and forth with an email of, am I available this time or this time? This makes it nice and easy.
Something to think about when you're inviting folks to a meeting, unless you have the audio conferencing package, call-in numbers are not a part of meetings. Right now, because of COVID-19, there's a lot of features available in Microsoft. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There's a lot of calling features in Teams. The call-in using a dial number is one of those that requires an additional licensing. But the ability to have external participants or anyone join a meeting from that link is available. You don't have to have the audio conferencing package for that. Making calls over the internet to internal people inside your Office 365 tenant is also still, that call functionality is still there. Dialing, making calls to an external number or dialing in to a conference is not a standard feature. But we do have some cool ways to, from kind of the audio perspective of a meeting. Dawn, if you think we're at a good point to kind of switch over into a little bit of the actual, what it looks like when you're in a video call or meeting. You're on mute still. Hey, Dawn, can you hear me? You're on mute.
Yes, sorry, I muted
That's
myself
okay.
and then I forgot. Okay, we have a couple other questions about calendar. So the first one is, if you create a meeting in Outlook calendar and then access it within Teams, can you then add a channel to the same appointment? And the answer is no. I just tested this to double check and make sure that I was correct. But if you start within Teams, it'll give you the option to add a channel, but you can't go back and add something from Outlook. So the next couple of questions on calendar was, can you schedule a team meeting call via Outlook? If so, could you add attachments? So I think what that means is, can you schedule something in Outlook, add a Teams phone number, so to speak, and add an attachment?
You sure can. So Outlook does have the functionality to schedule a Teams meeting. It was very similar to scheduling a Skype meeting. It's a button in Outlook, and it will populate the call-in information, and you can include attachments and other, as you normally would, into an Outlook email.
Yeah. So can you open another test meeting real quick, Marissa?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have two questions that came in about scheduling assistant. And the one was, can you see what is on the calendar of others or just availability? So if Marissa populates in my calendar, the answer is going to be yes and no. I might have my own privacy settings locked down on my end that shows that makes it so that Marissa can see that time is blocked off on my calendar, but it doesn't see the content. On the flip side, when I go to schedule a meeting with Marissa has her calendar wide open for everybody to see. So I can see what's happening on her calendar. A lot of mine are locked down. I think that's just a default setting that I set up, and that's just the way that it is. So yes and no. The other question came in about somebody was on their own calendar and they can't seem to find where they get other people's calendars. They asked if you could show this again. So this is how you do it. You open a meeting and you click scheduling assistant. You can add them as a required attendee or add them as an optional attendee, and it'll pull their calendar into the view. And then last question that was on editing is, how do they know if they have the audio package for dial-in numbers?
So you can ask your Office 365 administrator. It's a licensing component. It is a specific audio conferencing package. I believe it's included in the old E5 plan, which is like the really high, the enterprise level version that has like a phone system component to it. But it is also a package that you can add on, and the pricing escapes me at the moment. I want to say it's like $8 a month, but that could be inaccurate. So we can confirm that. But it is an add-on across the plans. Typically, plans don't include it. Let's see. Yeah. Anything else about scheduling before I give folks an idea of what it looks like to video call and meet? Now we're bumping up right on the end of time.
No, nothing else about scheduling.
All right, so let me pop over to a different screen so I can, I think it's this. Oh, there we go, advanced. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yep, you're good.
All right, I'm gonna pop over to this slide. Okay, so video calling and meetings. You can meet now with a group of people, one person, or you can schedule a meeting for the future. It can be a recurring meeting, lots of different flexibility. When you go to log into a meeting, you will be greeted by this window. It's black right now because when I pulled the screenshot, my camera was off. But if your camera is on, it will show you what you're looking at. So if you're using your rear-facing camera, it will show you that you're accidentally looking at something other than your face. This button right here, this little camera window that's currently purple, that is going to be how you turn on and off your video. Once you're in a call, that toolbar is going to look the same for turning on and off video. This right here is your background settings. I accidentally drew the line from join now. Ignore that. That line should extend all the way down to this little squiggly, that's a blur background symbol. It'll pop out this menu of background settings that will allow you to change your image. Right now, there's not functionality to add your own custom background, but there are plenty of high quality images that you can upload. And of course, Microsoft says, don't worry, we have you covered. We'll be allowing you to do your own background images soon enough. The little microphone is going to be your audio settings, turning it on and off. And then the little settings, the cog that currently says PC, mic, and speakers is going to actually pop open your device settings menu. So as you're joining, if you wanted to change, let's say you're using 2 monitors or a TV, and you wanted to change the input, you can certainly do that for your speakers, headphones, your microphone, and your camera would all be done here. These things can also be accessed while you're in the meeting, in the call, but just to kind of give you familiarity with the beginning. The phone audio, I like to point out to people because sometimes our computers don't have the greatest audio capacity, especially if you're you need a microphone. So if you wanted to join with your computer for the content, but you wanted to use your phone for the audio, you can hit this phone audio button, and it'll actually pop up this menu here that allows you to have Teams call you, so that you present as one consistent person in the meeting, Marissa audio as well as Marissa content, instead of my cell phone number for my audio and my content. That gets helpful the larger meetings because there is functionality in Teams that allows you to create a lobby before a meeting, and then you can approve your guests into your meeting or your people into your meeting. And so if you have a cell phone number without a name, it can be concerning for security purposes. So that's a neat little feature I learned after the fact that it can be very useful. Once you get into a call, you'll be greeted by a very similar experience to any other video communication. You have your tiled view. You can have up to 9 tiles in your view. Microsoft will limit based on your bandwidth though, so that you're having a quality experience over seeing a bunch of blurry images. You can pin videos, you can change your view in the upper right-hand corner. You can change if you want it to be a speaker view, if you wanted to only show content. Also, you'll see at the bottom of this screen, you'll see the menu again. There's the camera, there's the audio, there's these additional, the one you can't see right now, it's grayed out as share screen. I'll actually show you a better picture. So the video control bar here at the top, it's got your camera for if you want to turn video on and off very easily, your microphone for audio, the share screen. This share screen option will allow you to choose which screens, if you have multiple monitors, or if you want to do a particular, not a desktop, your whole desktop, you just want to do one browser window, you can select that there. The ellipses will pop out in this menu that gives you a whole bunch of options. A couple things that call out. The device settings is where you'll change, if you get into a meeting and realize that your camera is wrong or your audio is wrong, you can go into the device settings and make changes there. Meeting notes, you can actually, when you're in a meeting, you can open up kind of a OneNote experience, and you can take notes in the meeting, and it'll actually capture with that meeting. Updating your background, so showing background effects that allows you to do things like blur your screen, which is a really neat feature because if you're working from home and you don't have a really great space to work from, people might be hesitant to share their video. So that blurring your background screen does a really good job of just muffling everything behind you, focusing on you, so that you can have that confidence to present your video. Because the more often we use video, if we're not physically in the same space, it's going to help really boost our personal connections. The other thing about this is the start recording. You do have the recording options, and that automatically saves to stream. And then also on your video controls is your meeting chat and then the participants. So just to give you an idea, if there are people that haven't been approved into the meeting, they're in the lobby or the waiting room, it will show here as well. It'll show, right, you see there's a currently in this meeting. There would also be a section for waiting for approval. Another really cool thing is that if you were in a video meeting and you would like to respond to things going inside of Teams, or if you need to go somewhere else in Teams to refer to information, you can do so just by clicking the left navigation pane. And then it will just create a teeny tiny window in the left-hand corner for your video, and then you can use Teams in the background. Any questions about that?
We had one question came in about screen sharing within a video call. And I real quick just want to acknowledge that we are over time. If you need to duck out, thank you so much for joining us. I would love to make sure that we answer the questions that are in the queue. So if you have a couple of minutes, stick around. And if not, you're definitely going to get the full recording when we've got it ready tomorrow. So with all that said, okay, so the question that we had about screen sharing was, it says this person has used screen sharing several times and it seems to not be very user-friendly. If I want to change the app I'm sharing, I have to stop sharing and then restart with the different app that I want. Are they missing something?
Not that I'm aware of. But we can follow up on that. My experience has been that I have to stop sharing in order to represent. Mm-hmm. But we can look into that and see if it's a known issue or if it's something that is just not intuitive. The good news about Microsoft Teams is that it is a very major focus of Office 360 or Microsoft, and there's a lot of content available just generally on the web. But also we have really great relationships. So if there are questions that we can't get answered easily, then we, being a Microsoft partner, definitely we can leverage that. Mm-hmm.
That was all that we had about video calls.
That was it. All right. Well, let me double check. I actually think that was everything I had on. Let me just double check.
I think there was one other last like tips and tricks thing that you're going to show, and that was the command bar. How can they do shortcuts in the command bar?
What would I do with that, Dawn? All right, so up here in the search bar, if you want to be able to,
by the way.
Oh, yes. Let me share my screen again. Sharing my screen. Let's see. Zoom doesn't make sharing my screen easy either, in my opinion. Okay, get you into Teams. Can you see my Teams?
Just about. There we go. I sure can now.
Okay, so up here is your search box. So if you want to search something, like if I want to see, Dawn and I had a conversation about a coffee campaign, and I want to, I guess it helps if I get out of my, pick the right option. If I come out of the calendar and I search for any references to coffee, it'll show me, once I search for coffee, it'll show me messages, people, and files. So I can toggle between these. If I'm looking for a file, then I can search specifically. And here I can, if I know that I want to find it from Dawn, I can go ahead and search in here. The other thing that I can use the search bar for is to show people, or excuse me, not show people, but use commands. So if I wanted to, again, like I did earlier, the whack saved, that gives me the opportunity to find all my saved list. However, if I want to come in here and just hit the whack or the slash, it will show me all the options I have. So if I want to just chat someone real quick, I can type in chat. When I hit enter, it'll actually tell me that I can find Dawn here, and I can just say my message, and I can send it, and then I can be done with it, or I can enter and I can go view it in the chat itself. There's also, now that I mentioned that, there's also a really quick trick to do that when you're, let's say if I'm talking to Dawn and I think of something that I need to ask someone else, I can also mention them right then and there. Well, it might not let me do it in chat because it's private, but if I go into a Teams channel and I do the @ mention, it'll bring up the person and I have the option to right click and send them a message right then and there as well. So you don't have to leave in order to send these messages. Apparently, let's find somebody who does exist in this team. I come here and I hover. Well, if she's here. Oh, there it goes. Everything wants to go all at once. My window is not opening. There we go. There's Dawn, and I can go ahead and send her a message straight from here, or I can check different options, call, video, all that stuff right from there. All right, other questions, Dawn?
So I have 4 remaining kind of miscellaneous questions. I think you're done with all the planned content, right, Marissa?
The only thing I had left here was just the apps, just to let people know that the standard apps on the left navigation side, the sidebar here, it ends actually at files. So your chat, your Teams, your calendar, your calls is just basically a home base to make calls. If you're not using their phone plan, there's limited functionality here. But Planner and Stream are apps that I have added, and you can do so just by going in here. Again, this is stuff that you're going to use kind of personally. This isn't stuff you're going to share with people. This is your kind of perspective on things. So if I wanted to go into Stream, I can see that I have like a watch list and I can speed through to things.
Mm-hmm. And can anyone add apps, Marissa?
Anyone can add apps. So it's really about the admin permissions. So Teams is all about how you work. And so the idea is that you can add these personal apps to help you do your work. It doesn't affect other people. When you do add tabs to channels, that's something to think about because not all apps are 100% secure. Some of them are going to pull information in the background. And so we, as an IT team, and I encourage you to discuss this with your IT team, is what apps do you want to approve? If they're Office 365 apps, it makes a lot of sense. If it's third-party apps, you may want to lock those down. We refer to that as shadow IT a lot of the time when people use their own apps. But because this is Microsoft 365 and it accesses all of your content, you want to be cautious about what you're linking into it. So I always recommend on the admin side, locking down what applications people can install. But once that's approved, they can install anything on that list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so that kind of, I feel like is a good transition into these remaining miscellaneous questions because one of them was about security and the question was, is it always best to be signed into OneDrive? Any security issues there?
So it depends. OneDrive, if you have it on your computer and somebody accesses your computer, they could technically log into Office 365 if everything is saved password-wise on your computer, if everything is synced. We do highly recommend using multi-factor authentication so that you, if you're logging in from a different location, that will essentially prompt you for that second form of ID. So even if someone gets into it, compromises your account, they know your password, they still can't get in without that second form of authentication. I don't know of any inherent security risk. However, based on my experience from account management and marketing, it still is very limited. So we can ask our team for more specifics, but I'm not aware of any security issue there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question. Is there a way to collaborate with another Office 365 user outside of your network? For instance, can you chat with another Office 365 user specifically?
So it's still considered an external participant, still a guest, and so you would need to go through the same setup on the administrative side in order to allow guest access. But it's not like a Google chat where it was you could easily just chat outside on whoever it was.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so can you edit the names of teams or channels?
Yes. Yes, you sure can. So if you come over to very similar to how you would do it with Teams, or excuse me, private chats, you just use the ellipses to manage the teams and the channels. And inside of there, you'll be able to go in and maybe not the general channel, that is the default. But if I come into here and let's say I edit this channel, I can change the name of the team.
And part of that is locked down by, or can be locked down, right? So if you don't want people editing channel names, they can do that.
I would default to our team for that. The permissions in Teams are based on kind of SharePoint backend. And so the idea is that if you create something in the team, everyone has access to it. There are some controls, but to what extent, there are some ways to restrict people from creating Office 365 groups, which impacts how you create channels. So there's a lot of things to consider there in terms of what you prevent people from touching.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so last question in the queue, and that is, so instead of using Outlook as my primary interface, is there an advantage to working within Teams instead for those contacts that I'm involved with, and then use Outlook for other new contacts who I'm not apt to collaborate with?
Absolutely. So Teams really gives birth to this idea of being in kind of, I think, where Outlook or email was at one point years back, where it was kind of this place that everybody worked out of. This allows us to get quick responses and kind of get what we need while we're working. And if there are some conversations that you can't have inside of Teams, reserving those for Outlook and kind of separating those gives you an easier pane to work from in Outlook as opposed to kind of putting everything there. And email can get really caught up in the cycle of having kind of this instantaneous response, but then you have a thread of emails as opposed to moving it into a chat format. But they all tie together. So the idea is that whatever interface works for you, works best, you can access it all.
So that was the last question in our queue.
Oh, wow.
So Marissa, if you wouldn't mind going back to the slide deck so we can show people the last two events in our remote office series. So while she's doing that, thank you all so much for joining us today. I know we went a little bit over time, so I appreciate you sticking it out and hanging out with us. I appreciate all the questions that you asked. If you have more questions that we weren't able to address in this call, we will definitely, we are happy to follow up with you. And I'm sorry, I saw a question that just came up into the Q&A feed, so I'll come back to that. But also, as a reminder, this is recorded. So we will send you a link to this recording tomorrow afternoon, and you will see, you can rewatch it, you can share it with friends, et cetera, et cetera. So Marissa.
Attempting to give you your slide. Give me 1 second to bring it back.
Don't worry about it. I think we're okay. I know I can just tell you. So we have 2 more events coming up in the remote office series. And then that's it. That's it for this series. But don't be too sad because we're coming back with a new series in the next couple of weeks too. about a completely new topic with a lot of other cool things within that topic. So the last two events that you can see on your screen right now are the home office hardware solutions next week with our friends from Lenovo. So if you're thinking about working from home long term, it might be a good idea to think about the right hardware that you need, and maybe you need a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more mobility. Maybe you need some extra monitors. I need some extra monitors. So definitely, definitely join that especially if you're thinking about working from home longer term. And then the last one, we're calling Back to the Future, where we're going to kind of wrap this up. We're going to talk about some lessons learned. We're going to talk about some important things to consider moving forward. And that's actually going to be led by Clay Harris, who is our president and COO. So you'll get to hear from a small business owner's perspective on what he thinks remote work is going to look like going forward, and some important things to remember. So definitely join that. We have a couple quick questions. Can you quickly show how to get to work charts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then while you're doing that, somebody said, can we get CEU credits for being on the call today?
Let's see. All right. We're going back to Teams. All right, and I am pulling up the org chart. So if I'm in a chat with someone, I can just easily click on organization and it'll bring up the flow. It'll bring up kind of the company's organizational structure.
Cool. All righty. Well, thank you all so much. Again, this recording will be in your inbox tomorrow, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, y'all.